Hi and welcome to Karate Over Coffee. My name is Cheyne McMahon and I'm your host. This is a podcast dedicated to my experiences in karate. I started karate as soon as I could walk. My parents owned a full-time dojo, so I literally grew up in the dojo as our house was on top. I've lived and breathed karate my whole life, and I've trained with some really amazing sensei, competed for my country, and I've learned so much about the evolution and history of karate. And I'm here to share my experiences and learn. Enjoy. G'day guys and welcome back to Karate Over Coffee. My name is Shane. This is our last episode of the year. Well, not when I say our, it's me. This is my last episode of the year. It has been a long year. A long year for lots of things, depending on where you are in the world. Lockdowns, open, back to lockdown, open, back to lockdown, Zoom karate, oh God. Anyway, hopefully we won't have to go back to any lockdowns or these Zoom classes where I am in Brisbane. Hopefully we are all sweet. But yeah, look, when I started the podcast, I didn't realize it was going to be such a effort. It's a long, hard road, because it's not just making the podcast. I mean, like physically turning the computer on or turning the webcam on. But it's the editing, it's trying to create a title for it. Oh man, it takes ages. A photo, all of these sorts of things, a logo, trying to think about what to talk about as well. Sometimes it's very easy, I'll just pick it up and just start rambling, which you would have noticed, but other times I really struggle to get my point across, to articulate how I'm thinking, but otherwise it's been really great. I've met some really amazing people this year, and I'd like to call them friends. So it's been really good. Met some new people, learned more about karate. Next year I've got some really great people coming on, all set, ready to go as well. We might do a Christmas special at the end of the year, just like a good UK show, maybe The Office. I give you three shows that I love and I've watched again and again and again. The first is The Office, the UK version. I love it. I love that show. It is one of my favorite shows. I could watch that again and again. Other one is Rick and Morty. Oh man, that is hilarious. I love that show. Yeah, I could watch that. I've watched that lots of times. And the last one is The Wire. If you haven't watched The Wire, pause and go and watch it. It is brilliant. Set in Baltimore in America. How unprofessional. I'm sorry. Somebody is messaging me. Luckily, it is my podcast and not a professional one, but The Wire. Man, I've watched that show, that series maybe 10 times. It is fantastic. In fact, I named my dog Marlo after one of the characters on that show. And yeah, so make sure you check it out. It is 10, 15 years old now, so you got to take that part with a grain of salt, but it does age well though. It's really good. And I've also started drinking cold drip coffee. Let me just take a quick sip. I haven't talked about coffee in the last few episodes. I keep forgetting, but every episode I do have a coffee with me. I just forget I get wrapped up in talking about karate, but yeah, I'm under the cold drip coffee. It is more expensive, but dang, it's good. So the other thing is, there aren't that many karate podcasts, and I've actually become friends with some of the guys who have their own podcasts. In fact, last night I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about Bunkai, and I just sort of said that there's too much Bunkai and not enough karate. And he said, "You don't consider Bunkai to be karate?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't. I don't consider Bunkai to be karate to a certain extent." And when I say Bunkai, well, I think Bunkai is an invention. I think it's a modern idea and a modern concept, and I'll tell you why I think that. Originally, and whatever originally is, but karate in Okinawa, before it became into the schooling system and became a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach, it would have been one sensei to two students, if not one student. And when you're at the dojo or at the sensei's house, which would have probably been more correct, it would have been in their house or backyard, or so let's just call it a dojo to make it nice and easy. But so when you're at your sensei dojo, if you are practicing kata, it would be for you to practice those moves at home. The emphasis at the dojo would have been on partner training and movements and concepts. It wouldn't have been so much on the kata. That is for you to practice at home. But now we've flipped it. When you go to the dojo, that's where you practice your kata, right? Instead of practicing at home. Yes, I know some of you will practice your kata at home, but when you go to the dojo now, the classes are revolved around kata and kata practice and the kata kihon practice as well. So when you were training with your sensei, 100 years ago, for example, your sensei is explaining what the movements are, and we call it kuden. Well, not we, but kuden is the name, the word of mouth, or the oral explanation. So your sensei is explaining what the moves are and why we practice moving out to the side. So when we're doing, let's say, inside block, from out to in, some call it uchuke, some call it sotuke, but let's just call it from out to in. So from the outside to the inside, we call this uchuke, or inside. So the idea is, if the person attacks you with their left hand, you use your left hand to get to the outside of that person. So when you're doing an inside block and you shift your right foot across, you're practicing getting to the outside there. So that's a concept or a principle of movement that's found in the kata. So your sensei will be explaining that to you. So when you go home and practice pasai, for example, when you're doing an inside block into a cat stance or an ukiashi dachi or a short front stance or a front stance, however you want to practice it, you will remember that the idea, the concept, the principle of doing the inside block is to get to the outside of that person. So you're on the outside of their body. So there's no need for bunkai. The bunkai came about because when karate became that cookie cutter approach where you have to teach 50, 60, 100 people the same way, you don't have time to explain to people why you do this, why you do that. There's no individual attention. And karate changed. When I was in Japan, it changed. It changed, of course, and it became more of a physical conditioning, solo physical conditioning, kata kihon movements, and that became part of that became karate. And when the foreigners came, they practiced the kata, but they started asking questions. Why this? Why are we blocking to the body? Why is the fist closed? And there's no sensei there to explain it to them. The fist is closed because it is safer to practice instead of gouging somebody's eyes. So then they started to reverse engineer the kata. They try to fit a why for the how, and that is how bunkai was created. That is how bunkai came to be. How it's a modern invention. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but what I do think is, and this is the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, and even now, there is a massive time spent on trying to figure out the kata and creating bunkai for the kata, whereas I think maybe time is better spent on actual training, actual karate training, whatever your karate training is, whether it's kata kion, kumite, throws, joint locks, takedowns, whatever you want to call it. I think there is too much time spent on trying to hallucinate applications for movements in kata without understanding the movements of the kata. But anyway, that's a discussion that I had, and it's very hard over Messenger to talk about that, like in such a I'm not a great writer, I'm not a great typer. I doubt I could write a book unless it was a verbal book. A verbal book? What the hell is a verbal book? But if somebody was like, what was it, talking to text or whatever, I don't think I'd have the patience to sit there and type it out. But anyway, that's another chat. But that's not really the reason I wanted to talk today. But what I do want to do is, because this is the last, I know you will get very bored without my fantastic podcast. I know, look, I'm sorry, but I need a break. Now, I'm being funny, but so let me give you a couple of podcasts that I listen to. There's not that many karate podcasts, so I've probably listened to most of them, if not all of the karate podcasts. But these are the main ones that I keep listening to and keep going back to. The first one is, well, he hasn't done much lately, but Josh Simmons' podcast. Josh Simmons' podcast called Okinawa Karate Podcast. I've had him on the show. He only interviews people that he's trained with or is in Okinawa, which is great. But probably the reason why he hasn't done so many episodes is because of the lack of travel at the moment because of the pandemic. But yeah, jump on and listen to that one. Next one is the Invisible Sensei with Tawari Dawson. We've become pretty good mates as well. He's in New Zealand. He's a Gorju practitioner, but he also does judo and ieido, I think. And what's really interesting, he does Māori or Maori or Indigenous New Zealand martial arts as well. He talks a little bit about that too. So I think he's exploring those options. Just as a side note, I've looked into that too through talking to Tawari for Australian Indigenous fighting arts, and there's not really much. I mean, there's 50 or 60,000 years of Indigenous Australians or First Australians or Aboriginals, however you want to refer to us as, because I am Aboriginal. So there's not really a lot of the people many years ago were not a tribal people. They didn't fight each other. So there was no need for any sort of weapons. The weapons they do have is for hunting, for hunting animals, not so much hunting each other. But I did find something interesting, and they were generally, if they were going to take over or if they're going to go to war with another group or another mob, they would take the women rather than kill each other. They would try to steal the women, which is obviously awful and interesting, but different times. So their spears and weapons were not so much against each other, but more against killing kangaroos. Or there's a big thing called a nala, which is a small club, thick, heavy on one side, and that's for goannas to bash goannas and snakes and stuff like that. And years ago, in 1995, we used to be part of the Ryobukai, the Japan Karate Do Ryobukai, or the Shindo Jinru in Japan. And we had the World Championships here in Brisbane. My dad organised it in 1995. And instead of giving, so we had countries, America, Japan, England, many countries come. Venezuela was huge. Probably not now, but they were a huge delegation. But instead of giving out medals or trophies, we gave out, first place was a Nulla Nulla, the club with Aboriginal paintings. Second place was a boomerang. Oh, sorry. Second place was a short spear, and third place was a boomerang. So instead of getting your shitty old medals and trophies that you throw into the cupboard, yeah, it was so awesome. Like I still have mine here too. So that's 25 years ago, and everybody loved it. Really, it was just such a unique trophy, a unique recognition that how good you did in the competition. So anyway, thanks, Dad. It was brilliant. If I ran a competition again, like an international one, I'll do the same. So thanks for that. One of the many things that you've given me. Back to the karate podcast. The one I listen to the most is Karate Over Coffee. Oh, sorry, that's mine. Sorry. The next one I listen to is the Apex Karate Performance with my friend Michael Hagan. So I speak to Michael quite a bit, and so his Apex Performance is based on kata performance and kumite performance, mindset, and those sorts of things for competition, WKF style competition. I think his YouTube he's got a YouTube channel. I think that's better than the podcast because you can visually see what he's talking about. I've stolen a couple of things off him as well, which has been great, but I've told him. So is it stolen if you tell the person? Anyway, now the last one I've been listening to, and it's just started, is Michael Hagan again. So him and his friend Jonathan from America, they've got a new one called The Way of the Fist. I think they're like 3 episodes deep so far, and I love it. It's fantastic. Jonathan is a Gorju practitioner and a Kumite athlete, or was a Kumite athlete, and whereas Michael is a kata athlete. So they give a different perspective on kata and Kumite, a different perspective on Shorunu, which is Shorunu Shinaha, which is Michael, and Gorju or Nahate for Jonathan. So both are fully loving of Okinawan karate. However, they both love competition karate as well, which is me. I love competition karate, and I love older style Okinawan karate and so forth. So really, it speaks to me, and I've even spoken to Michael on a couple of subjects that he's talked about. And as soon as I hear it, I message him straight away about it. But yeah, they're the top ones I listen to. I've also listened to Conversations on Karate. It's a UK-based conversation one. They do interviews as well. Both are Shotokan practitioners, and they talk about UFC. So I don't dig UFC. I haven't really watched it for a long time, like, I don't know, 10 years or so, 15 years. So, and some of the guests I don't really know either. I think because it's more UK based, I don't know some of the guys, but they did interview Mario McKenna, which I'm hoping to do next year as well. Well, it's actually one of my guests coming on. And next one I listened to probably that one, and Karate Without Belts. I started listening to that. They're like 10 years in front of me. They're like they are like Judan, and I'm still a green belt. So I listened to that one, get some pointers off those guys too. They're on Bujin TV as well, I think. And if I can get to half of the episodes that they've done, I'd be very happy. But let me tell you some other podcasts I listened to as well. Actually, this one somebody recommended from my dojo because it's called Hardcore History. So guy's name is Dan Carlin, and if you don't know who he was a journalist, or is a journalist, investigative, a journalist who investigates stuff. And the one I've been listening to is called Supernova in the East. Basically, it is about Japan trying to take over the world. So it talks about the pre-Meiji period and how Japan changed to, and why they thought that they had the right to take control over other countries. It's long, man. Like, there are 7 episodes, I think, so far, and they are somewhere between 3 to 4 hours each. So yeah, snuggle in. So if I'm listening to it, I listen to it in the car, driving, or if I'm washing up or doing something that requires little brain power, I'll just sit there and listen to it. I don't know that driving has little brain power, but you know what I mean. And yeah, I've been really, man, you can really see how karate, especially with Itosu and his 10 precepts, his 10 lessons, how he shaped those 10 lessons to get into the Olympics, to get into the Japanese army. You can see how, you can see what he was doing when he wrote those 10 lessons. So it's really interesting. Make sure you check it out. If there's one podcast you want to listen to, well, if there's 2 podcasts that you want to listen to, that one is your second one. It's really interesting. And the last one is the Hubermann Lab. Man, this guy is smart. He is I better read this correctly because I don't want to make any mistakes. His name is Dr. Andrew Huberman, and he is a tenured professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. So his podcast talks about, I'll read it. The Huberman Lab podcast discusses neuroscience, how our brain and its connections with our organs and our body control our perceptions, our behavior, and our health. I mean, I have listened to this one. There's lots of episodes as well. I mean, what are they up to? Hundreds, maybe. But they are 2 to 3 hours long, and they talk about how the brain controls your body, and so many awesome things that I've applied to my own personal journey, as well as into karate as well. So make sure you check that one out. I mean, man, he is smart. He is smart and he's articulate, and I want my podcast to be like his. If only. But anyway, guys, there are some podcasts that I've been listening to, and actually the first podcast I started listening to was my friend George Free's Martial Arts Media, and I've been on his podcast a couple of times. He is my marketing coach as well, but he's also my friend. So next year we're going to team up and do some stuff together as well. So if you haven't checked it out, his podcast it's not so much about martial arts marketing. It's more, he does interviews with martial artists, not just karate, but lots of different martial arts. But he also talks about marketing as well. And whether your club is 10 students or 1,000 students, you can definitely learn something from George. I've been with him for 3 years, almost 3 years. 3 years this month. There you go. And he has helped me grow from 70 members to 300 plus. Plus, he's also helped me. Here's some breaking news. Next Monday, we are opening our 4th location. So our 2nd location in Brisbane, in Cooperi, where we were for many years. So we're opening another full-time dojo. So everything that I learned in how to grow a karate school in 3 years with George, I'm applying to that dojo. So already we have about 30 to 40 students ready to roll right from when we first opened the doors. So all of the systems, everything that I've done, everything that I've learned from George and other partners in that program, I'm applying. So instead of being 1 year deep, I am 3 years deep. So when we open this new dojo, I've got all the systems in place, everything ready to go. So it'll be, I mean, there will be problems and issues and dramas, of course, but it'll be a lot better that I'm 3 years advanced rather than opening a brand new dojo when I've got no idea what I'm doing. So, there'll be more stuff with George next year. But on that note, have a fantastic break from me. And also, if you get away, if you're lucky enough to have a Christmas break, make sure you have a great and a safe one. And I will speak to you shortly. You know, guys. Oh, also, it'd be remiss if I didn't say check out our Karate Over Coffee shop.com.au and karateovercoffeeshop.com. And also, if you bought some of my stuff, thank you. Would love to see a photo of you holding a mug or a t-shirt, wearing a t-shirt or something cool like that. I would love it. And make sure you put it into our Karate Over Coffee community Facebook group as well. But, guys, thanks very much. And I'll speak to you next year or maybe Christmas. See you soon. Thank you for listening to Karate Over Coffee. And if you're enjoying the podcast and getting something out of the episodes, there are a few things you can do to help us. If you don't already subscribe to us on YouTube, please do so. We release these episodes every Friday morning, Australian time. Plus, we release some smaller espresso shots during the week on both our YouTube channel and our Facebook community group. You can also subscribe to us on our Apple or Spotify. Leaving a 5-star review will be very beneficial as well. If you have any suggestions or topics or feedback or anything that you want to talk about, please put it in our comment section on our Karate Over Coffee community Facebook group. If you'd like to support us, please visit our online shop where we have official Karate Over Coffee shirts, hoodies and mugs available. Your continued support is appreciated and a vital way for the podcast to keep moving forward. Thanks, guys.